Big_Eggs, formerly known as Guest0000, is a Roblox developer who joined in February of 2010. From then on, he published several different games, most of them being quite normal yet entertaining ones. One of his most popular games is Mow My Lawn 2, created in 2013, still has an active user base of 17 to 20 people daily, though, as of now, the game hasn't been updated in 6 months. However, back in 2010, he created a slew of games that to this day are nearly forgotten entirely. Currently, as of now, the oldest game that is seen publicly on his profile is the aforementioned Mow My Lawn 2 game. But oblivious to the naked eye, it turns out that he had created a game way before that one. A game that would start a completely reckless history, one of which that still haunts a few players to this day. It is currently unknown exactly when the game was made, though the title is very well known. This game had been given the name RSG Space Station and was thought to be a quite simple game. For what the title said, it was a space station game. When you joined the game, you would spawn in a large lobby area with furniture scattered about, mostly using furniture-free models that were posted from 2007 to 2009. The game featured many different hallways with small hatches that the player can enter via walking into them. The hatches that led into separate rooms were created with hinged surfaces to give a realistic feel. The skybox was a dark, starry night, emulating the endless space feel. At the time of its creation, RSG Space Station was a quite inconspicuous game, though in December of 2010, it became clear that something was not right about this game. Around that time, several people posted to the now-defunct Roblox forum about their experience with an out-of-place level located within the RSG Space Station game. They claimed that there was a secret area that was accessible in the game, which led to several dark caverns with endless paths. This was not too concerning to most people, since it may have been an Easter egg that Big_Eggs had implemented to inspire curiosity in the player base. But the truth was far less ordinary, as it turned out, for users whose usernames remain unidentified for reasons coming to fruition soon, explored the game, trying to solve the mysterious dark corridors that were seen by past players. Player 1 entered the west hallway, which led to a small kitchen area. He decided to enter the fridge, which had a non-colliding door, and then went away from his keyboard for around 10 minutes. When he came back, however, he discovered that he had fallen into a dark corridor, black walls, scattered foliage, and flashing mesh spotlights that hung from the ceiling of the caverns. After seeing his predicament, he at once contacted the other 3 players about what he was seeing and gone ahead to enter a call with the 3, which was hosted via their cell phones. Each of them had 4 cell phones each, conveniently to be able to hear each other. Platforms like Discord did not exist in 2010. So this was a practical solution to be able to stay connected with each other. Player 2 entered the earlier room that Player 1 had been in and went ahead towards the refrigerator. Though nothing seemed off, there was no sign that the fridge had somehow magically brought Player 1 to another world. It may have been some sort of time teleporter, and Player 2 didn't want to try to trigger the sequence again. After fiddling around the kitchen, Player 2 discovered a second entrance to the tunnel. After walking on top of the stove, he fell through the stove as if it had 0 collision and landed in the tunnel system below. Players 3 and 4 followed suit, and now they were all together. With the aspect of them being in this endless underground maze, they all decided to split up into groups. Player 1 and 3 stuck together, while Player 2 and 4 stuck together in their own group. Nothing interesting happened for more than 12 minutes. although players 1 and 3 had discovered a plethora of odd things that were off-putting. Player 1 discovered a room halfway down the 4th corridor in the cavern. The room contained custom-built furniture, tattered and broken. The objects had this grimy, decaying decal texture applied to their appearance, which was unnerving, especially when they spotted a brick-built teddy bear covered in this dark green and black moss, with one of its own eyes missing. The teddy was just sitting on a chair placed in the left back corner. Another room they found while traversing the corridors was a gray room. This gray room had a cage placed in the far right corner, with a figure with a black cloak and yellow head placed inside said cage. The character was sitting down and had both of their arms positioned to cover their face, crying. Upon closer inspection by player 3, it was found out that the figure did indeed have a face decal, although it seemed very wrong. The face was clearly based off the default smile face that was already iconic at this point, though its mouth was turned upside down in a deep frown, and this black liquid was trickling down from the eyes. It was as if the face was melting or the eyes were crying ink. Though it was just a decal, it still unnerved them. Further searching on their end gave barely any results, and as player 1 was about to turn around and head back the way they came from, a scream emanated loudly from an undisclosed source. After frantically searching where the scream had come from, it had been soon realized that the scream had come from one of their cell phones. The scream had come from player 2. Player 1 swiftly responded to player 2's distress and shouted, asking what had just happened. Though even after asking what the matter was, player 2 continued to scream loudly. At this point, they were all freaked out, and player 3 was now calling player 2's real-life name repeatedly, trying to gain his attention. Unfortunately, this was in vain, as player 2 suddenly disconnected from the call, but he stayed in the game. Now, with player number 2 disconnected, a dark presence loomed over the remaining 3 players as they continued to traverse the game. Player 1 began to frequently question the 4th player about what happened and what he had seen, and eventually player 4 responded, though it wasn't as they'd hoped. Apparently, as players 2 and 4 were traversing a rather long hallway in the tunnel system, they discovered a trapdoor that led down into a basement, but as they entered, they saw something horrifying. It was a volley of dead Robloxians. Their characters were disfigured, and each of their limbs had been smashed to pieces, which was not a thing that could occur with a player model. Usually when a player dies, their limbs will fall off, but these limbs looked crushed and broken into separate pieces, as if they had exploded into tiny gifts. After inspecting some of the decapitated heads, it was quickly noticed that each head had no face, rather than being an already existing face being worn on their character. They were each wearing a smiley face, each with a yellow backdrop, and the mouth and eyes colored a crimson shade. They were equally unnerved by this room, but then things went from bad to downright horrible as a bloody smile appeared out of nowhere. It was not on the wall, no. This was a floating red, smiley face illustrated in this bloody wet paint style. The face was floating. It seemingly glided towards player them. The face is large and as wide as their own characters, though their attempts to dodge had failed terribly. As player 2 was touched by the smile face, his body incinerated like paper touching lava, as a sparkle effect was left in his place. As this happened, player 4 had successfully dodged the smiley face by jumping towards the ladder just in time and climbing up carefully, expecting player 2 to respawn and continue his journey. His expectations were shattered as player 2 screamed loudly and hung up. Player 1, shocked by player 4's shaky recollection of what had just happened, told player 4 and 3 to leave the game, because there's a chance that this game was far worse than just a spooky bait-and-switch game. Even if the term bait-and-switch was not used often, it still felt as if the creator intended for it to be such. Players 3 and 4 obliged and left the game promptly, leaving Player 1 alone. Player 1 began documenting his findings via text messages and spoke directly with the other 2 players using a cell phone. After traversing the level for several more minutes, Player 1 finally discovered something interesting. As he stepped into yet another corridor within the secret level, he fell through the floor and landed in yet another basement area. The room he landed in was a stark gray room, with the floor colored dark gray. Inside the room, on the right wall, was a smiley face. You know, those smiley face clip art that come with an old paint software. Yes, that was plaster on the wall. Player 1 noticed this and approached the wall. After his character touched the wall, he then found out that the wall also had 0 collisions to it. This meant he was able to phase through the wall and continue to the next room. After clipping into the second room, the smiley face was there again, but it slightly changed. The smile looked slightly lower than it was before, but nothing else had changed. It was barely noticeable, though you could tell the expression was less happy than before. Player 1 continued, again phasing through another wall. Every wall he phased through, there was a smiley face on the other side. Though, every time he went through a wall into the following room, the face's expression kept getting decreasingly happy, the mouth slowly curling into a frown. After 30 rooms or so, the face had lost its happy expression, and it was now in a deep frown. But Player 1 continued, beyond his better judgment. After entering the next few rooms, the face had now changed into a scowl, and again after repeating the same cycle and entering the following rooms, the face changed again. This time it was different. The face started to show shading around the edges. The eyes slowly became glossier and looked less like an oval from paint software. It was apparent that the face had transformed into a semi-realistic version, possibly modeled in 3D software and then uploaded to Roblox as a decal. After Player 1 had passed the 50th room, the face now looked angered, agitated, now in a far different artistic style than before. It was as if it was illustrated by a professional painter and no longer had that 90s paint software feels to its appearance. Player 1 stood there, starstruck by the uncanny feeling of this whole thing, before regaining mobility and moving into the 51st wall. As he did that, the situation hit the fan fast. Everything in the game turned pitch black. The game started flashing black and white. The whole thing seemed indescribable. A message started flashing on the screen, showing incomprehensible gibberish or text written backwards. The black masking was clearly apparent, though hard to make out. Player 1 snapped many screenshots, hoping to analyze them later for further research. A loud droning noise was audible as a strange audio clip began to play. The clip was hard to make out what it sounded like because it was speed pitched to a level that could only be 0.4 or 0.5 precinct. The only thing you could make out was that it almost sounded like someone speaking, but completely impossible to understand what they were saying. The player's character was abruptly launched into the skybox, his character glitching out with such violent audacity because of its farness from the floating point. At this point, Player 1 started to panic and his game started chugging quickly. The mouse was not responding, the fans of his computer blowing loudly. He made the irrational yet understandable decision to power off the computer. As he had expected, this worked, and his computer went pitch black as it turned off. He sat there for a minute or two, his head trying to comprehend what had just happened. His mind eventually came back to earth and snapped him back into thinking brain. Without saying a word to his peers, he turned on his computer, the Windows XP chime playing proudly over the entire thing, which slightly changed the mood of this entire thing. After signing in and waiting for the computer to start, he opened his web browser. Feeling as if he had accomplished something, he began speaking to his peers, exclaiming his confidence that he had solved part of the mystery, and that it had been true all along. That was until he opened the Roblox page. Upon checking his profile, he noticed that his character was now wearing a t-shirt. This shirt was not what he expected. On the torso of his Roblox avatar was a 3D render of a smiley face, the eyes dripping a dark liquid, and the smile turned to a frown. He had not purchased this t-shirt, so why was it equipped? He quickly unequipped the shirt, and soon after, he ended the call with his two other friends. Player 2 was never heard from again. He never responded to anyone. He never went online. He was just gone. His account was later terminated, seemingly password guessed, but cannot be certain if that was the true reason. Players 1, 3, and 4 refused to tell anyone about what they had experienced. They did not want to tell the truth of what they had seen. The main reason being was their fear of what happened to the second player. Player 2 was their friend, a partner, and now he was gone. They did not want to spill their side of the story to others, in fear the same will happen to them. For years, the mystery remained unsolved. The game was taken down later on, the possibility of it being set as private by Big_Rigs as an effort to hide his past, though this is just a rumor. It is unknown what happened to the game or where it went, but the question remained. Was it really made by Big_Rigs? And if not, who or what published it? There are more questions that still have not been answered about the game, and these questions might never get answered fully. Player 1, to this day, still remembers what happened as if it was a terrible nightmare. That player and his nightmare is me. I happened to be the first player, and after what happened, I rarely played Roblox going forward. Though, there's a chance I may have an answer for a couple of these questions. After recovering a thumb drive, I managed to uncover 6 or more of my screenshots of the game. One of them happened to be from the moment the hint flashed on the screen. I decided to try to decipher the text seen in the flashes. The first one was written backwards and spelled out when rearranged forwards. Black mist above your skies, I'm with the mist. The second was encoded as base 64 code, and when decoded it spelled out. Because of me, Marcus is dead. The third message, this one encrypted with a 7-shift Caesar cipher, and upon being decoded, it spelled out coordinates. These coordinates, when put into Google Maps, led to a ditch nearby a highway in Pennsylvania. In the ditch, there was a cross and a bouquet of flowers. After further research, I discovered something. On December 29th, 2010, a man whose first name happened to be Marcus was found by passers-by, lying face down in said ditch. He was deceased and happened to be rediscovered 4 days after going missing. When they found him, his skin was pale, and a black tar-like substance was pooling in his eyes, his nose, and his mouth.